Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kwabna Kisiedu and I'm a structural engineer. Now, this video is part of the Computer Applications to Civil Engineering class C452, and for the past few weeks you have been introduced to the theoretical foundations of BIM, that's Building Information Modeling. That is what it is, why it's revolutionizing the architecture and construction industry, and the core concepts behind it. Now, in this series, we are going to bridge the gap between theory and practice. We will make use of Autodesk Revit, which is the primary tool for implementing BIM, to build a small project from the ground up. And I am confident in the fact that by the end of this series, you should be comfortable with using Revit for BIM. So, what is Revit? Well, I guess when you think about it, Revit seems like any other 3D modeling software, but it's actually fundamentally very different, right? So imagine drawing a wall in your typical 3D modeling software. That wall would be made up of lines, which would form a shape. Now, this shape would not have any information attached to it, but if you were to draw that same wall as a wall object in Revit, that wall would have properties. So it would have, for example, the height of the wall. And if you were to draw something like a column in Revit, that column would have properties like dimensions. So it would have the length, would have the breadth, would have the height, right, where the column is going to reach. We would have the compressive strength if it's a concrete column. We would even have stuff like the fire rating if you wanted to add them. And that is what makes Revit very different from the typical 3D modeling software. All right, so let's get straight into the use of Revit. Now, when you open up Revit, this is what you're going to see. This is the start screen, and over here on this side, we have the recent projects. So these are basically a number of projects that I've opened up before. And on the left side, we see models and families. So think of families as being the building blocks that make up models. So in a typical building construction project, your walls, your windows, your doors, right, on the architectural side are all different families that make up the model, right? Then on the structural side, stuff like the columns, the beams, the slabs, and even the foundations are all families that come together to form the model. So the model is a combination of all of these things, and it's actually a digital twin. So I want us to get straight into the use of Revit. Now, let us all go to models, and under models, we select new. After selecting new, you should see this window, right, which prompts us to select a template. Now, if I select this drop down, you can see that I have two options. And depending on the version of Revit that you use, you might see more than two options. And these options might have different names. I use Revit 2026. So these are what you should see when you're using Revit 2026. Another thing that I would like you all to know is that before you start using Revit, it's advisable for you to install the family pack for that particular version of Revit. So I've installed the 2026 family pack. That's for Revit 2026. Another thing I want you to take note of is the fact that there are two systems of measurement. There's the imperial and the metric. Imperial consists of the feet and inches, right? And with the metric, we use the millimeters, meters, kilometers, etc., right? So before you start your project, unless you are working on a project for a client who deals with imperial measurement, make sure that any template that you select is a metric template, because once you start the project, it becomes very difficult. It's really annoying to change all your units and the families one by one to a metric template. You might as well just start everything over. So what we have here are two templates. It says Imperial multidiscipline, same metric multidiscipline. But I don't want us to use any of these two template files. So what we are going to do is click on browse, and you should see quite a number of templates here. But you'll notice that we are in the English Imperial folder. That means that any template that we choose in this folder uses the Imperial system. So what we are going to do is to go a step back. So I click on this very button here. It takes me a step back. Now in this folder, I select the English folder. So just like I said before, if you don't have the Revit family pack, you might not see all of this. So I select English, and here, all of these are metric templates. You can see default metric, Yahoo metric templates. And I want us to go with the construction default metric template, this very one. Depending on the version of Revit that you use, it might be under a different name, but you should be fine as long as you select anything that is named like a construction template. And in a scenario where you don't have anything that looks like this, you can even select, for example, an architectural or structural analysis template. Just as selecting this would also mean that you'd run into some issues when we start working, but I'll point out how to resolve those issues. But anyway, for everyone else, you select construction default metric. So the thing about template files is you can think of them as being some predefined settings for a new project. So imagine a situation where, for example, you're working with company A, and with company A's drawings, they have certain templates. So probably certain colors that they would like for different elements. Maybe they would want windows to be blue, columns to be red. Yeah, some stuff like that. Now, if you don't have a template file, it would mean that for each project that you were to create, right, you'd have to go through the trouble of defining all of these colors, right? And it could even go down to stuff like the page numbers, right? You can create a template with different page numbers, different page names, and even with the families that are loaded up when you open the project. For example, if you use an architectural template, most of the families that will be loaded up are architectural templates with just probably a few structural templates added, just the very default ones. If you load the structural templates, you'd have a lot more structural families and just a few architectural templates. So it's important to make sure you choose the right template for what you are doing at the moment, so that you don't have to go through any additional work in setting up the project. All right, so after selecting this construction default metric template, I select OK. And here we are. This is the Revit 26 UI. Now, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of things, right? It all looks so complicated, but trust me, after using the software for a while, it's going to be very easy. So this part that we are seeing here, this large white space, is a drawing area. So this is where we place stuff, we draw our walls, we add our columns. This is where we do all of that. And if you are somebody who has used AutoCAD before, I'm sure this area looks really familiar. So this is the ribbon, right? And we should see different tabs. So I see architecture, structure, steel, precast systems, and I see a bunch of other things. With the very first few tabs, right, these are actually the various disciplines in the construction industry. So just like I mentioned earlier, with BIM, it's a combination of work from various disciplines. So in one BIM project, you could have an architectural model. In that same project, you have the structural model. And if there are stuff like mechanical models, you'd also have the electrical models. You could have all of them in one central model. So these tabs show us families, right? So there's a wall family, door family, window family. They show us families for the various disciplines so that we have everything grouped and we can choose what we want to do. And now, when we look at this side, we have what we call the properties tab. Properties tab. So to demonstrate what the properties tab does, I'll quickly draw an architectural wall. So this is my architectural wall. Now, to be able to make use of the properties tab, you have to make sure you are selecting a BIM object, right? And now when we look at the properties tab, I can see that I can find a bunch of settings, right? I'm seeing base constraint, top constraint. I'm seeing the option to select whether it's a structural component, and I'm seeing some predefined dimensions. So I'm seeing length, which has been calculated for us, area also calculated for us. Now I'm also seeing volume, right? And a bunch of other things. I'm seeing facing. This facing thing actually comes into play when we are dealing with BIM, right? We are dealing with stuff like different phases of a project. If you have maybe phase 1, phase 2, you make use of this side. But for now, we are going to leave it. And all of these things actually constitute the information part of BIM. So with each object, right, like each wall, each column, we're able to change all of these properties, right? And if you want to take it a step further, if you click on edit type, you see even more properties of this wall. So I can see heat transfer coefficient, thermal resistance, I can see roughness, I can see some IFC parameters, and here, so this is fire rating, you can even add costs, can add assembly code, so many things, right? Just so that this wall, this tiny unit, has a lot of information attached to it. Now, when we look right below the properties tab, we see a project browser. Now, this project browser is where we are able to find all the floor plans and all the elevations. So, for example, in this project, we have 2 predefined levels. We have level 1 and level 2. I opened up level 2. Then on the elevation side, we have the east elevation, which you can see. So I can see my wall. We have the north elevation. I see my wall here too. We have south and the west, all accessible, right? Then we also have schedules. So if you have looked at architectural drawings before, they would have a window schedule and a door schedule. So if you were to create any of those schedules, this is where you'd access them. And if, for example, you also to create any sheet, this is where you'd see the sheets. So think of this as being the same as the paper space in AutoCAD, where you could just cycle through all the sheets you have. We also have ceiling plans here, but these are more of architectural stuff, so we are not going to focus on them. And you'll notice that when I opened the levels, right, they showed up as different tabs over here. So you can easily cycle through any of the opened tabs, right, to switch between the various views. And some people even like to go a step ahead, right? They make things even crazier by showing 2 views side by side. You can actually show more, but that's only if you have like a very big screen. So I'll quickly show you how you can do something like that. I'm going to close up these views. So I think it would be nice if I had the level, right, showing on either the left or the right side, and I also had the 3D view so that I could see in real time what I was doing. So what I'll do is I'll come to the very top, click on this house icon. So this is the 3D view. Then what I'll do is I'll go to view and select tile views, this very option under the Windows section. And yeah, as you can see, I have my 3D view here. I have my 2D view. So let me draw some more walls. So I went to architecture, selected wall, just click, and you can see in real time that it's adding the walls in the 3D view. Yeah, very nice. My house already looks very nice. Right, so that is it. This is the basic UI of Revit. I know there are a lot of things that I haven't covered yet, but when we start working on the building, we'll be exposed to all of them. But anyway, when it comes to navigation in Revit, it's almost like how it was in AutoCAD. So to pan in a 2D view or 3D view, you press and hold the middle mouse button and you drag just like that. To zoom in, use the middle mouse button, you scroll in. If you want to zoom out, you scroll out just like that. Now, if you are in a 3D view and you want to rotate the view, what you do is you press and hold the shift button. Then, while still pressing and holding the shift button, you press and hold either the middle mouse button or the right mouse button. So still holding shift, press and hold middle mouse or right mouse button. And yeah, you're rotating your view. Now, if you like to rotate the view about one single object, so for example, one of these walls, you select the wall and you start rotating. You notice that it's rotating about the wall. So if I was to select this one, you see, it's rotating about this particular wall. So that is how we navigate to the Revit user interface. Now, I recommend that everybody would pause the video at this point and just try to familiarize themselves with the UI so you can cycle through the various tabs, see what is here. You try navigation, try drawing a couple of walls, just like how I drew mine. Try rotating the view, try panning, try zooming in and out. Then when you select, for example, a wall, look at all of these options that we have here, like the base constraint, top constraint. Yeah, just try exploring for yourself. Then and try cycling through the various levels, various views. And now you can see that after adding the 3D view, which is this one, it now shows up here. So in a project, you could actually have multiple 3D views. Maybe I could have a 3D view from this side. I could duplicate this view, create another one, show it from this side, right? And I could even add this 3D view. So I'll add a third view, have two views in 3D, then my 2D view here. Yeah, can go crazy with it. So explore all of these options, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video where we are going to go deeper into adding families, right, to our Revit project and making our customizations to all of these properties. Yeah, so all the best and see you in the very next video.